Hey, welcome to this video. Today I'm in Cagliari. Thank you for joining me. Do not go away because I'm going to explore this city in 24 hours. Join me on that adventure. Morning. I'm here on this bright sunny day in Cagliari, Italy, Sardinia. Sardinia is an island off the coast of Italy, quite a long way from the mainland, and fearfully experiencing the outbreak of the coronavirus. Is this a man-made virus? Only time will tell. But I have 24 hours to explore Cagliari. It's a Saturday. I've never been here before. It's the capital of Sardinia. It has been invaded over the years by pretty much everyone. Almost, anyway. So, I'm living in the north of the city, just down there. I'm going to be heading to the east to check out a couple of churches. Then I'm going to head down to the south of the city, and then I'm going to go to the west of the city. Let's see what happens. And I'm already getting funny looks. So I might be slightly overdressed today. I will find out. I'm in black as per usual. Let's explore this city and see what we'll see. Okay, so I realize I've been butchering the name of this city. Cagliari or Cagliari. I think it's Cagliari. I don't think you say the G. I'm gonna go check out that church. It's one of the things to do on TripAdvisor. And this is the Parco di Monte Urpinu. Butchering that, I know. It's about, yes, almost 9:30 in the morning. I've had breakfast. Breakfast in my basic B&B was There's a total sense of paranoia going through my head right now. There's about almost 500 people in Italy being taken down with the coronavirus. Granted, that's in northern Italy, and Sardinia is a long way from the coast of Italy. However, the transportation of people is inevitable that even here gets the problem. Now, I mean, I live in London, for God's sake. It's an international airport of the world. So this basically tells us London's going to get hit bad if it hasn't already. Basically, expect any week now global cities around the world to be shutting down. I could be wrong. I don't think I am. There we are. So we can get first sign of mountains over there. Let's see. This is a park on the east side of the city. I figured it would be good to start on the east where there isn't too much, according to the map, apart from this park. But I noticed that the park is elevated. So I'm hoping if I get to the top, I'll have a good view of the city. It'll give me my bearings on a place I don't really know. And given that it's only 9:30, hopefully that gives me enough time to explore the whole city. So we shall see. So the plan is to head up there and then, let's see. Well, what a pleasing sight. I mean, straight away, as I ascend the hill to this park, I'm greeted by a cockerel saying good morning, geese doing their thing, and a rather beautiful peacock. So here's the thing, I always suggest anytime you visit a new city, new anywhere, try to get to the highest point possible, because by doing that you get your bearings, and then it gives you more of an idea than you can really see on a map. It's the geography of the city, and it just gives you bearings. Also, it gives a little bit of exercise in the morning. So on this bright sunny morning, it took me about 10-15 minutes to reach the top. In the distance, there's a very old castle that way. Top of the park, I'm greeted by ravens. The world's smartest birds, probably. The car park right at the top, Cagliari, is protected by mountains either side of it. Well, not mountains, big hills the size of this. And then in the inland, people sort of congregated here and a city was set up because back in Neolithic times, back in the Roman times, back in the, you name it, those that came through built this city. They liked the fact that there was swamp in the mainland, well not swamp, marshes, which made an inland attack very difficult. And this is one of the most sheltered ports in the Mediterranean. And it's also one of the biggest ports. And the reason Sardinia and certainly Cagliari has the wealth that it does is because of the port. Incomes in Sardinia and certainly those that work in Cagliari are comparable to those in northern Italy. Northern Italy is obviously where the highest incomes come from. I think this wind is going to be destroying. God damn you! So this road that takes us out of the city, as a car whizzes on by, the reason to walk up here with my lacquer sunglasses on. Always remember your sunglasses, and this is why I wear sunglasses, because I squint otherwise and I can't see a thing. But let's have a look. This is the eastern side of the city, pretty much the edge. But I think it's good to see, just so we can get our bearings. Just got advice from a local that head up a little bit further and you get the best view. And he's right. On this side, hopefully there won't be too much wind and I'll sort of shelter down. You can see the fact that there was marshland all surrounding this area. So this is the east side and the marshland here. Now that's been cultivated in the hundreds of years that the people have been here. So you can imagine back in Neolithic times, that was very basic and that stopped invaders. So what they had the mountains to their advantage. So if the city of Cagliari was ransacked, they could run up the mountain and hopefully sort of have a last final defense. And it would help possibly save the women and children. And you never know, sometimes marauding tribes, marauding armies, it took pity on them. And I'm going to sort of stand up and see if I can get to that person over there, have a better view. Yeah, pretty epic view, has to be said. This rock is volcanic. Much of Italy was produced through volcanic eruptions, and Sardinia being no exception. This probably dating back millions and millions and millions of years. I'm sure if we go back 65, 100 million years ago, dinosaurs would have been walking on this land. I'm sure if you look hard enough, you'll probably find fossils, remnants of these amazing creatures that used to live on our planet. So, let's get our bearings. You can see where I came from. That was pretty much the start of the church down there. The key is I'm going to try and make it down without slipping on my arse because I don't have much grip on my shoes. I think it's fair to say that early on a Saturday morning it's a good time to come up here because usually, and I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, but Monday to Friday during the working week when Sardinians are commuting into Cagliari, they're using this as one of their major roads to get into the city. Apparently the city expands from something like 155,000 to just under 500,000 people peak times during the week. So it's a big commuting town. And I imagine if you come up here later in the day or during the week, it's not going to be quite as peaceful. I'm staying in a B&B just down there to the right of that church, somewhere down there. And I've just walked up here to get my bearings, to see the multicolored city, and just to really understand what it's like. And now let's go and explore Cagliari. I always feel slightly pleased with myself when I manage to get to the destination before the busload of tourists. As I stated earlier, Cagliari has a really rich history when it comes to the people of Cagliari. Originally we had the Neolithic people, which would have stemmed from all over, effectively Europe and up from the Middle East and Africa. But then we had the ancient Romans that came through and sacked the place. And we also had the Vandals. The Vandals are an interesting tribe of people. They are thought to stem from Vendel, which is in Sweden. And obviously the phrase vandalism comes from the Vandals. Although wrongly so, because yes, they ransacked cities and they also ransacked Rome as Rome began to fall. Yes, they ransacked places, and as they migrated through Europe, stemming all the way from Sweden and thought to have a lot of common relations to the people of Germany. Look at this guy. Look at this guy. But just like a peacock, Vandals also produced amazing art and brought beauty. They didn't just destroy. I don't think peacocks destroy anything, really, do they? They just generally make a bit of noise and look beautiful. Oh, here's a point. If you ever see people selling peacock feathers, I would avoid them, because sometimes it's not just people picking up the feathers that the peacocks drop, it's actually peacocks being plucked. The ones that get plucked don't look as beautiful as that. So avoid that. Peacocks prefer their feathers. Your living room can live without them. That's a healthy chicken. Doesn't mean you should eat it. That chicken likes being alive. This very imposing building wouldn't look out of place in a dystopian future where the Nazis took over. This is the local courthouse. Basically, I would imagine this scares a lot of would-be criminals, because if you end up in this, it doesn't look like they're going to go easy on you. I could be wrong, but apparently Sardinia's got a pretty low crime rate, and maybe it's because of buildings like this. Crazy theory, but maybe it does work. What's frustrating about a video, I can't really portray the smell. The smell is not like your typical city, it's very scented. I think it's trees or something, but it's bouquet-like. I know there's a flower store about 200 meters that way. Oh wow. It could be that, it could be a combination of everything. It's a nice smelling tree. I didn't realize palm trees smell so good.
Il vero vaccino, vero vaccino. Vaccino per i globuli bianchi. Materiale per la fabbrica del midollo osseo.
Fantastic.
Con quel materiale globuli bianchi armati bene. Capisci italiano?
I speak no Italian, so but I can see you're passionate about your food.
Questo materiale sono i veri vaccini.
Yeah?
Materiale per la fabbrica midollo osseo, per creare globuli bianchi armati bene e inglobare qualsiasi tipo di virus e batterie, compreso il coronavirus.
Brilliant.
Questi materiali.
Okay.
Armatura dei globuli bianchi.
All Italian.
I veri vaccini.
It's all from Sardinia.
Questi, Santi.
Yeah?
Questi li coltivo io.
Yeah?
Coltivo questo, quello. Poi c'è i spinaci belli.
It's fantastic. It looks very good. Thank you. Grazie. Thank you.
Prego, buongiorno.
Wow, look at this. See, this is ingenuity. The guy's got his car. It's a Citroen. It's a very old Citroen. He's got his oranges, he's got his vegetables. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. He's just on this corner street. Despite the presence of the judges, he's able to set up on this corner, slightly off the parking. I guarantee in England he would have a ticket by now, and his business would be shut down by some busybody council worker. But here, he sets up his vegetables, he's making a living, and he's selling some beautiful fruits and veg. Love it. That's nice. I had to get something from him. It would have been rude not to. What a lovely man. I mean, despite my lack of Italian, you could see he was very passionate about his fruit and veg. Off camera, he was trying to discuss, and there was a lady trying to help the translation, that he basically sources it all from Sardinia. Nice man. I get one of these. Nice way for the Sardinians to spend their Saturday. Playing tennis, nice courts. Normally when I have my tangerines, they're at Christmas. And obviously UK, we have to import these tangerines. This is as fresh as it gets. These are juicy tangerines. Straight off the street. If you're ever in Cagliari, find that little man, or that tall man actually, and get yourself some tangerines. Very good. Slightly frustrating. I looked on the map and there's a cemetery to visit, but I've been trying to get in. I'm all the way down here. Long wall, I can't enter. Access denied. Let's keep going. Meow meow. Who are you? I made it in and I found all the tourists. So this is obviously a popular attraction. So let's go explore. There's a real Italian name. Vincenzo Lecalli. 1894, 62. Carlo Siciliani. Great Italian names here. Salvatore Galvado, Antonio Maloni. It's like my rendition of Italian accent. I had the pleasure of living with some Italians in my 20s, and I'd forever hear their wonderful accents. The Italians probably do more talking than anyone I've ever met. They talk. But wonderful people, wonderful people. I'm yet to have a bad experience with Italians, other than the fact that Italian men are very good at taking the girls that I like. But I wouldn't count that as a bad experience. I certainly haven't lost any to any Italians. A little bit like the cemetery in Lviv in Ukraine, this certainly is turning out to be one of those impressive cemeteries. I didn't really see it noted anywhere as a point to visit. I just looked at the map and I thought, well, that looks interesting. And it certainly is. So this is the monumental cemetery of Bonaria. It turns out that the cemetery is no longer accepting burials. It was put into use between 1829 and 1968. So effectively the last burial of its kind was in 1968. Since its closure in 1968, burials are only permitted in private chapels or burial vaults purchased before 1968. New burials, at least up until this point, as far as I know, occur at a different cemetery which opened way back in 1940. It would seem that the top here, possibly where the VIPs are, I can just about get up, I think. Yeah. But wonderful colours make up this city. Wow. Now this is an impressive shrine. Look at this one. Vicente. So this is the family shrine, as you can see. Well, he lived a good life. 89 years. Depending on how much money you've got, it will depend on if you have a massive shrine like these ones. Look at that one, it looks almost like an art gallery. It's not though, it's a shrine. Or you'll have one of these. I find this fascinating because in the UK we do things very differently. There is no right or wrong way to bury or say goodbye to someone. Depending on one's culture, depends on what you do. I think this is one of the nicer ways to do things, being stacked up. Or as long as you get on with your neighbours, because imagine you're buried on top of someone that you didn't like. That's a bit strange, isn't it? It makes me wonder, have they been cleared out to make way for new ones because they haven't paid their subscription? Sometimes that happens. I know in Norway, if you don't keep up the payments, they clear your grave out and they replace it with someone else's. I'm pretty sure that's probably the same here, because this is premium space. This is right at the top of the hill, and look, you see these ones are smaller. So those ones you got to go in sideways. You got to go feet first. Those ones they can roll you in. A little bit more space. So this is where some people in Sardinia, let's just have a look, effectively end up. Wow. I wonder if this was her. Maybe she's been cleared out. And if that is her, where has she gone? This guy came alive, or this woman. They are quite beautiful, and this one's a double one. They've combined, obviously that's probably a wall separating them, but they've combined. It's really amazing. I mean, there's shrines and then there's this one. What a view. View of the ports, impressive port, view of the city. Probably one of the greatest views in the city, in fairness, if you're standing on top of that, or lying inside and you're spiritually aware. But I do like the fact that they've all got their pictures on the graves. Not all of them, but the ones that do. It still kind of shows that they're not just a name. I mean, Antonio Pisano, he didn't live the longest life. Very beautiful cemetery. This is possibly one of the more beautiful cemeteries I've seen in Europe. Obviously there's many beautiful cemeteries in Europe, but this is certainly up there. Obviously those private chapels that you just saw are still accepting burials. Note some of the dates in those private chapels were post 1968, but the majority of the graves that you see in this graveyard will be pre 1968. Before this place was actually a cemetery, it was a site of a necropolis, which was used by the Punics and the Carthaginians. It's thought to date back almost 2,000 years, and possibly before, because they found in the old limestone remains of some seriously old individuals. Incredibly peaceful down here. Very peaceful. Amazing steps have just come down, and that's the top up there. But onwards, I think I've spent enough time amongst the dead, and I appreciate that time. I think we need to go see some living people now. Coming up later in this video, I visit a necropolis that is truly amazing, so stick around for that. Just this tree alone, I'm just trying to think how many years this tree has been here. Very impressive. Nice little side garden just at the bottom of the cemetery. But time to face the busy traffic. It seems everyone's woken up now and taking the rest. One of the best ways to see a city is to make sure you buy one of these in the supermarket. Amazing value, 22 cents. That's cheaper than most places in Eastern Europe. It would seem the supermarket is really reasonable prices. The wine is good value, the beer is good value. It's 19 cents. My direction is to find the major points of interest on the map. The points of interest is this library. But I have to admit, right next door to it was the Macaleria. Far more interesting than the old library, although it's a beautiful building. When exploring any city, I generally use TripAdvisor and also Google Maps. I find TripAdvisor works incredibly well in most of Europe, and Google Maps generally works impressively well all throughout the entire world. For new sites, may have places missing. Just bear that in mind. This is one of the recommendations from one of my subscribers and friends, Richard Smith, said explore as many of the side streets as possible. So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. I'm starting to pretty much approach the sort of center of the old town. Previously I'd been on the edge, more of the modern part where I was staying, and now this is more of the center. The buildings are phenomenally older. Roads are a lot more narrow, and the buildings just very impressive. I think it's plainly obvious that I've now stumbled across the main shopping area, pretty much the central CBD. Well, it's central business district, but so central business district. Sardinians sort of going about their usual sort of Saturday. It seems very peaceful around here. Obviously this feels like a much newer part of the city. This is one of the main piazzas apparently on the map. So I've headed back north into the city through the historic old town into La Benedetto to get to this food market, and because it's about midday now, I figured it would be a perfect time to sort of explore the market before it closes, because obviously if you come too late, and I imagine after probably about 3 o'clock, things might start shutting down. So I don't want to make that mistake, and I've made that mistake so many times in other cities. So let's see what this is like.
Please, no.
Well, you can smell all types of food. You can fruit and veg to meat to seafood. Real strong smells in here. The noises, the sounds, that of a very typical market, but unlike a lot of markets, we seem to have the meat around the outside, and we got the fruit and veg randomly throughout the middle. Although it doesn't seem to be some order, but it's a real sprawling market. I'm glad that I've sort of popped down here at midday when it seems to be peak busy. You see the mozzarella. You see the mozzarella just down there. I don't know what this thing is about young pigs. I don't know, have you ever seen so many little piglets sort of strung up? Pig trotters. All cuts of meat. Meatballs. Pig stroppers. We zigzag a little bit. Zigzag. Clearly corn-fed chicken. That's why it's got that yellow look to it. Normally fed on corn. If you ate corn all day long, would you go yellow? I think I might. I certainly know if you drink too much alcohol, you go yellow. So stock up on this. Ah, this is the best smell. The smell of cheese. And this is the hardest part. Can you really devote yourself to veganism when you've got the cheese that smells this good? It smells phenomenally good, that cheese. Certainly better than the meat. I don't like the smell of meat. Maybe Italy without the Italian. Sorry. Ah, this cheese. I'm looking at the cheese here. You can't see it yet. This is phenomenal. Look at this. Wow. Amazing. Tiny meatballs here. Popezzine. Spiazio. It would seem these Sardinians like their meat. Obviously you get your vegetarian food as well, but there's a huge love for meat here. I certainly love pork. Baby pork, which I find quite bizarre. Strangely, where's the fish? This is good. I'm tempted to get some of that hot food, but I'm not quite hungry yet. I think it'd be sensible to go to a restaurant maybe. Cagliari, the Cagliari flag. It's a beautiful looking store, isn't it? Asparagus, pears, melons, tomatoes, everything you need to stay healthy. Really good. Oh wow. Wow. That's how to buy your wine. Plastic bottle. And it's €2.40 for that one, for a litre. $1.95 for a litre of that one.
That's it.
Fantastic. And this is Sardinian?
Sì,
Sì.
prodotto qui in Sardegna.
Fantastic. Well, it's just about 1 minute past 12, so I think it's acceptable to have some local Sardinian wine. Oh, it's good. That's good. Buono. How much?
80 centesimi.
80 cents. Fantastic. Fantastico. It's not high-level sophistication, but that is a tasty wine. It's the dry red that he has on offer. You can buy it for $2.60 a litre. That's 2 litres. You could fill that. You got to remember, your typical bottle of wine is 750 millilitres. So it's 2.5 bottles of wine for effectively just over €5.40. Yeah, €5.40. No, €5.20. Excuse my maths. And that's good. Beer is $1.50. Obviously, you can be a bit more sophisticated and actually buy a real bottle of wine. Olive oil as well. That's a minute, I want to try some. Let's try one. Free sample at the local market. Oh my god. That's really creamy. It's so good. Buongiorno. Ciao. You're gonna have to try it.
Buongiorno.
No. Buongiorno.
Buongiorno, mai sai di questo?
So I've now exited the market and I'm now going up the hill, the other side, because I'm heading, I hope, in the direction of the Roman Amphitheatre. Steep hill, a little bit out of breath, but I very much enjoyed that market. Wasn't able to really buy anything other than wine and try a little bit of cheese. Certainly a market to visit, I think, especially if you're trying to buy ingredients. You can see, to get up to the other side, it's steep, but it's a beautiful day and I'm massively overdressed. I want to give you an example of how badly I dressed today. Put this water down here. This big English coat from All Saints and this leather jacket and then a jumper, and I also had thermals on. It's been cold in England, so I've just been a little bit overdressed, and it said 4 degrees when I got up this morning. It's 17, 18 degrees now. Still wearing a t-shirt, still wearing a vest. In England, that's acceptable. Actually, it's probably not acceptable anywhere, just I'm a bit of a wuss. I don't like the cold. So apparently this old garden, public garden, used to house explosives. Well, explosives ornaments, I think it's more of the word. Castle's over there, but I'm more interested in going through this public garden because hopefully by the time I get through this garden, I get to the Roman Amphitheatre. So I'm excited actually. The Roman Empire was one of my favourite empires of the ages. Obviously, empires bring positives and negatives, but without the Romans, many of the roads that exist in the UK, for example, wouldn't be there. They certainly left their mark.
Yeah, all right, I'll grant you the aqueduct and sanitation are two things the Romans have done. And the roads. Well, yeah, obviously the roads. I mean, the roads go without saying, don't they?
This is a nice, beautiful park. The views over there, which is kind of where we just came from. But you know what? I'm gonna go higher. Is that one of the more impressive trees that you've seen today? That's winning in the trees of 2020, I tell you that now. That's because it's more than one tree. But still. Impressive. This one is certainly older. Probably gave birth to this one by dropping one of its seeds. What a wonderful tree. And probably played on by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of children over the ages. If I was wearing better shoes, it would be fun to go up the top of that. An amazing tree. It would seem a marauding tribe related to ISIS have come through here. Every statue is missing its poor head. I mean, I know the Vandals came through here, but these statues came after the Vandals, so senseless vandalism, really. It's a shame. At least she still has her head. Let's see what this is. maybe the lacquer heads outside is deliberate. There seems to be a theme. Headless. Chop the head off. This is quite dark. The rest of the art gallery, Italian artists, nothing really stood out. But then as soon as I enter this room, all change. This is certainly different. So all of the art back there, quite graphic sculptures, Francesco Cluso. I'm wondering if the art outside, the sculptures outside are connected. So maybe the Vandals didn't get there after all. Well, that was the gallery at the end of this beautiful park. I did ask the lady inside at the counter, thankfully she spoke a little bit of English, if the headless sculptures in the park were connected to Francesco Sciuzza. That's how she pronounced his name, so it wasn't Cusco, it was Sciuzza. And sadly they were not, and she said Vandals. Not the marauding tribe of Vandals, but Vandals in probably the 21st century. Up above the gallery is this pretty little trail. I hope approaching the Roman amphitheatre. Strange, I'm literally the only one around. It's a Saturday. Sardinians are shopping on the main central area, and tourists are elsewhere. And there's a cat down there. Meow meow. Onwards. The cacti. It does get hot here. 16 degrees today, but peak summer, you can get into the 40s. That's in the hundreds to Americans. One thing I will say, if you're in a wheelchair, this is probably one of those Italian cities, there are many, that aren't that good for you. What you need is one of those wheelchairs that can go upstairs, rickety paths, because there's a lot of them. When I was on the plane yesterday night, I arrived very late here, and that's why I began my morning very early. There were a number of individuals dressed just like this man. Obviously, it wouldn't have been appropriate to film them, but in this part of the world you get monks. They're dressed just like this, in these sort of tunics with these robes, and they cut their hair, the friar tuck type haircut. And as I clutch hold of this fence, it would seem that I'm looking over a building site, but no, in reality is I'm looking over this wonder. Look at that. That is an ancient Roman amphitheatre. And it just seems so neglected. I'm obviously going to try to get in there, but certainly not a focal point, but let's go and see. So I attempt to see the amphitheatre. Apparently they've had it under construction for 10 years, but the municipality of Sardinia don't seem to care. Possibly one of Sardinia's most important buildings. It's roughly about 1900 years old, and supposedly it would house 8,000 to 10,000 spectators. I spoke to the woman on the gate that was basically telling me how it's not open and we can't really go down. The construction has stopped and it's all boarded off. She was claiming it was 8,000, whereas the sign said outside 10,000 people. The amphitheatre used to be completely circular. Now only half of it's left there, because the castle that we see over there was constructed with some of the stone from the amphitheatre that was used to build the castle. Built by the Pisans, who used to govern over Sardinia. They governed it around the medieval ages, probably around the 12th, 13th century. But the Pisans had control over this Sardinia and this area. And then they, because of obviously the height advantage, that's where they built the castle. But it's a shame, because if the Sardinians had any sense, they would put all their effort into restoring that, because it's an amphitheatre that's 1900 years old that used to home Roman gladiators and wild animals and executions. It has some grim history to it, but it's significant, and yet it's being left to, well, they're supposedly restoring it, but I can't see much action going on. Sardinia is the perfect climate for amazing trees. So I've taken it upon myself to go into the Botanical Gardens, which is just below the Roman amphitheatre. And I guess that makes sense because the Romans would like to wander in beautiful gardens, and I'm pretty sure that there's always been some sort of garden in this area. €4 to get in the Botanical Gardens. As beautiful and miraculous as botanical gardens are, I often wonder where the lizard actually. Hello, missing its tail. Someone tried catching it. I often wonder why more of them aren't free. And the reason most of them aren't free is because the governments don't think the public deserve this sort of nature free of charge. I mean, it's perfectly possible to provide these sort of services to pretty much most people with the amount of tax that people pay. Whoa. When I was a child, these used to be my favourite plants, cacti. Anytime I'd visit my Uncle Paddy, he would give me a cactus to take home. I'd end up just basically pricking my fingers constantly. But I was fascinated by these things and just the fact that parts of the world have these gigantic cacti. So these botanical gardens were inaugurated in 1866. Today the gardens contain some 2,000 species, predominantly from Mediterranean origins. However, there are still plants from all over the world. This is limestone, and this is what the Roman amphitheatre that I couldn't get close to was made out of. So they would have probably taken the blocks from here. This might have been an area. Actually, it does make sense given the fact that we can see blocks that have been taken out of the cliffs. I'm pretty sure, at least some stage, this was involved in building, given its proximity to the amphitheatre, but also the castle, and I'm sure other buildings in this area. But look at this! Look at this! Phenomenal. I am the only person here, once again. The tourists are elsewhere, and the Sardinians are elsewhere. Wow. Impressive, eh? Just seen a sign that said Roman cistern, so I'm going to follow it this way. Here we go. There's an echo. The Pope this week announced the closure of the catacombs. Is it catacombs? Or the underground places? I'm walking through spider webs right now, actually. I can hear the echo of the fact that I am the only one here. We keep going, let's see what we see. I appreciate as it gets darker, it's very difficult for this camera to pick up light. So I know that when we can see light here, is this the end? And that's the dead end, okay. Wow. I mean, I'll be honest, the thing that pleases me that this isn't a public park. If this was a public park, you'd expect some tramp to be living down the end, graffiti to be sprawling the walls, possibly needles in corners. But thankfully, because it's not public, it's well maintained. We'll keep going this way. And there's no need for a sense of nervousness. Now I've got a duck here. But I could be wrong. It's always best to be cautious. What do we have here? Wow. Oh wow. So this used to store water, I imagine. Amazing. Hello? Ciao. Yeah. Not bad, eh? Wow. Okay, let's exit. Okay, I could just about stand up now. I was having to duck a moment ago, and now it's, as I continue walking, as I head towards the exit, it starts to get, well, far lighter, and now we come back out of the very crowded botanical gardens. Into the dazzling sunshine. And thanks for joining me on that one. Onwards, we continue. Just behind those walls is the amphitheatre. It's a shame I can't get up, but you say that, there's a broken wall over there. Just behind me, just up there is the amphitheatre. I don't know if this has been destroyed due to earthquakes or just destruction because they're knocking it down, I don't know. I'm not actually supposed to be up here. Let's get back on the path. Alone, but at least I have you guys, so that's something. I've got company. Oh, yep. So, got a bit of a fright there. Never interrupt a cat's toilet break. And also bear in mind that that's where they bury their toilet breaks. As I sit in this garden amongst the lizards crawling around my feet, I do ponder the number of inhabitants of this beautiful island that I'm really not going to get a chance to see in its entirety in effectively 24 hours. Hence the reason I decided to go to the capital. My advice, if you come to Sardinia, come for longer, come for a week, come for 2 weeks, come for even longer. You get to explore the entire coastline. I think it would probably take months, reality, to explore. It is a big, big island. Obviously we had the Neolithics, then we had the Romans, the Byzantine, we had the Vandals that came in. Then this kingdom was ruled by the Pisans from central Italy. Then we had, if my memory serves me right, we had the King of Aragon, which is effectively the kings of Spain. They came in, they conquered Sardinia, and then I think we had the Tuscans come and take it. One of the failures and attempts to conquer Sardinia was the French. Napoleon attempted to conquer Sardinia. His mistake was he wanted the port. He made the mistake of coming in from I think above, from the north. I think he got held down by the marshes, which is a perfect defense. And the Sardinians defeated the Napoleon's army. And it was the local people that defeated him. The Sardinians then expected a sort of place in Parliament, I think, in the Italian. I think they expected a place in the democracy that was going on in Sardinia, but they were denied, which was a huge mistake because then the locals then overthrew the people that were controlling Sardinia. And it was a bit of a revolution that went on here post the Napoleonic battle. Fascinating history, and it even got bombarded during the Second World War. It's changed dramatically in recent years. Now we've had a bit of a migrant wave, so the locals are changing again. Demographic invasion, some might say. It hasn't been impacted like some of the Greek islands of Lesbos has changed dramatically in the last 5 years. Some parts of Europe have changed dramatically also. Sardinia, I'm seeing people asking for money, and they are new arrivals. Only time will tell if it has a significant impact on the island. Okay, I'm drawn up that path, but I'm actually going to try and save myself a little bit of time because the museum at the end there is closed according to Google. I want to try and explore as much as possible. Amazing church up here according to the map. As you can see, all these little winding streets, just all unique and pretty. Love the balconies, random clothes. It's slightly embarrassing when your mum puts your knickers out there. Not that I wear knickers though. So we're going to head up this way, I think. What's interesting about this city is because of the Spanish links to Aragon and the Spanish kings, this city feels a bit more Spanish than it does Italian. I'm trying to avoid the wind again, typical. I love all these little paths. Hope the camera isn't too unstable. Apparently down here, up to the right, there's a crypt and a church worth seeing. Let's go. This is St. Ephesio. Beautiful little streets though. I don't know if I'm capturing this. Okay, I won't be doing the crypt, despite it only being €2. I seem to have run out of cash, so I need an ATM. My 150 in my pocket wasn't good enough, so €2 I've got to find, or forget about it. Go elsewhere. And like most things, this one's closed. I think it's siesta time, it could be the reason. Well, I just had some falafel, so I'm now ready for my next stint. I was getting a little bit low on energy, but I'm ready to go again. Wow! We made it. I think this way. As you can see, some of these blocks possibly were used from the amphitheatre. Possibly. Oh, don't tell me it's closed. Will this be the fifth thing that's been closed? Am I missing the entrance? There's no obvious entrance. This to me looks like the entrance, but I'm not seeing it. Okay, immensely disappointing because I'd read that you can go to the top of that building, but instead, no. It certainly feels like a bit of a ghost town, but I think that's all to do with the siesta time. People generally siesta anything between like 1:30 and 3:30. And we're in those hours right now. But at the same time, there's a lot of construction going on. Certain things I wanted to see simply can't. It's really magnificent town to explore. It's not like Barcelona where literally every doorway has something going on. Here it's kind of limited. Just up ahead there is the Cagliari Cathedral, possibly one of the greatest cathedrals in all of Italy. I was attempting to go into this beautiful cathedral, but it unfortunately had a very big funeral on at that very moment. So instead I've decided to go to the Leonardo da Vinci Museum. Very small museum. It basically focuses on the mechanics of da Vinci's work, and da Vinci certainly understood his mechanics, from his helicopter type invention to inventions that improved warfare. He was an accomplished individual, some say the genius of his time. I mean, it's hard to argue that he wasn't the genius of his time. However, the interesting part of this exhibition was the focus on the Last Supper. Now, the Last Supper, of course, you'll be fully aware, was da Vinci's masterpiece where he drew Jesus and his disciples' Last Supper. The detail on this Last Supper has always captivated people. But the more important detail in this important piece is obviously who is the person to our left of Jesus.
But they're all men.
Are they? What about that figure on the right hand of our Lord, seated?
Is it Ioannis or Johannes? Or is it Lady Magdalene?
This is an old wives' tale.
The original one, in fact. There's much evidence to support it.
Theories. There are theories.
Now, obviously, there's a lot of theories going around this, but personally, I think this is a woman. It's very clear as daylight. To argue that it's not is ridiculous.
Leonardo gives us the chalice.
If you have any thoughts on this, do leave your comments in the comments box below. I'd love to hear your opinion. I wanted to go in the church behind me, but there's a funeral on, unfortunately. Sad day when someone dies like that. So I went in the Leonardo Museum instead. €8, a little bit on the pricey side, very small. Always be warned when a museum says you can't take photos. There's a reason for that. It's because they don't want people showing the lack of museum. If a museum was worth the money, they would allow you to take the photos because the photos wouldn't misrepresent them. There was some artifacts on display which were incredibly interesting. The mechanics were certainly interesting. So I'm a little bit pausing really because trying to get away from the funeral because the coffin just came out. After the museum, I strolled a little up the hill to take in this amazing view, and this platform allows you to look out upon the city and then take the lift right down to the bottom. However, first I wanted to take in the rest of the higher ground, including this amazing tower. This is the second tower, an attempt to go up this one, but this is also looking closed and I think under renovation. But it's supposed to have one of the best views in the city, although I have had some pretty good views today. This is the National Museum of Archaeology, and it is a fantastic museum. Note the ancient gods there. You may have seen these in some of my other videos. If you watched my videos on Turkey, you would see her pop up multiple times. Once again, I found myself to be one of the few people in this museum. Yes, I admit I was literally on the cusp of the coronavirus shutting down Italy while I was filming this. So people were probably taking measures, people were likely avoiding tourist sites, and tourists were probably just simply not coming. Plus, this sort of place gets very busy in the summer in a typical year. Obviously, this year is not a typical year. The museum houses findings from the pre-Neolithic age and the Neolithic age, as well as the Byzantine age. It includes a large collection of prehistoric bronze statuettes from the Neolithic age. For example, the female divinities that you saw right at the start of the tour. There's also examples of the Nora stone, the Carthaginian goldsmith examples, Roman and Italian ceramics, and Byzantine jewels. This is a fascinating museum, and I very much recommend you do visit. Some of the artifacts are truly amazing. These ancient figurines are truly mesmerizing in my opinion. Look at their little faces, often seen throughout ancient cultures, as well as this dwarf-like figure, and some amazing Greek and Egyptian stone statues on display. However, the more interesting display is about to appear, and I honestly do mean incredibly interesting. Hasn't really been widely covered by the mainstream media. I was struggling to find much information on findings, but it's the giants of Sardinia. And these giants that you will see, that you can see, were discovered in the 1970s. What's fascinating, these statues were all found in 1974, and they're thought to be 2 meters in height. Obviously they're fragmented, and the thinking is they represented giants that potentially lived on the island thousands of years ago.
Have been greeted with strange and mysterious stories that a race of giants once lived there thousands of years ago.
The face is peculiar. Big green, big eyes, almost alien-like, don't you think? What does that look like? I mean, the history that they're not telling us is obscene. Some of these statues are holding shields over their head. These are the boxers, the archers, the warriors. Though they may be called giants in the strictest modern sense, they really aren't giants. They would have been the same height as Michael Jordan, or slightly under. Michael Jordan, I think, is 2 meters 1 centimeter, 2 meters 2 centimeters, which is about 6'6", because 2 meters is, I think, 6 meters 5 and a bit. Some people theorize that these giants were the Nephilim, the fallen angels that the Bible speaks of, and the Nephilim were the spawn of the fallen angels. Possible, who knows really? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Well, it's almost dark and I'm coming out of the Museum of Archaeology, and I have to say, fascinating. I got to meet one of the curators of the museum. He was telling me all about the history of those statues, and that's pretty much where I think I cut my camera off. And then I realized it's getting so late that I need to be departing this place because it's going to be dark soon. But he is convinced, just like I was, that those statues are far older than the current archaeologists are stating. Current archaeologists are stating that those statues are 900 years BC. Reason behind that is because they were found near a gravesite, and the gravesite showed these humans buried in the tombs, and you can carbon date those to 900 BC. However, you can't carbon date stone, and the reason why I think, and this is what got us onto the topic of why these statues are far older, was the water erosion on the statues. This is found all over the ancient world. The Sphinx, for example, in my mind, and the battery just died again. So in my mind, the Sphinx, for example, is far older than people are suggesting. Mainstream archaeologists would suggest that it's 3,000 to 4,000 years BC. My mind, and not just my mind, there's a lot of people on the fringe that believe it's far older than 12,000 BC. Would timeline it at least to be as old as Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, but also the erosion on the water, exactly the same seen in these statues. The statues, in my mind, are probably in some way linked to the Nephilim.
When we talk about the term Nephilim, it is associated with genetic hybrid entities.
Absolute disaster. My battery's dying, and as we find my battery dying, the sunset over here.
Oh, God damn it!
The next morning.
Hey, so it's the morning, and I've got my bag. I've just checked out of my B&B, had a nice breakfast, and I realize I have a little bit of time before I got to get to the airport. So I'm going to try and complete what I didn't do yesterday. And I'll just take my headphones off because I'm listening to music. What did I do last night? Well, I had quite a few beers, met some locals, no footage. So did I really do it? Who knows? Who really knows? My tired eyes might give that away. I'm now going to go try and see some ancient ruins. So I got on the bus from the centre to head to the west, and now here I am. There seems to be some sort of Sunday market going on. Very sort of makeshift sort of stalls. But I'm hoping it's about an 8-minute journey to the ruins. Let's see.
Davvero? Dici?
Facciamo un giro?
Ehi, non si dice queste cose. Metti una sedia.
So basically a typical sort of Sunday market you'd expect anywhere in the world. It's a little bit on the sort of makeshift size, but people sort of making amends. Seems like a bit of a car boot sale. So to get to the Roman necropolis, I have to ascend this very steep hill, which is above the makeshift market that I just witnessed. Now, as I ascend this hill, it's made me reflect on this sort of inequality that I'm constantly seeing throughout Europe and the world, but mostly Europe, because I spend most of my time in Europe. People laying out their few possessions on the pavement. Now, some of the people in the market are entrepreneurs and that's how they make a living, but the majority of people who are just putting a towel down and putting some old CDs or some broken remote controls or you name it down on the pavement in the hope that someone's going to buy it. That's people on the breadline. That's people really struggling. That's just trying to survive, and I see that all over Europe. It's not just in Sardinia. That's in London. I mean, right around the corner from where I live, where there's multi-million-pound mansions and multi-million-pound penthouses. There are people every Sunday near Brick Lane. Some successful entrepreneurs, but there's many just putting down their towels and trying to sell a few things. Now in the UK, there are social services and people are well looked after. However, life is still hard. It's very hard when you're living amongst people that have everything and you have to be walking past expensive restaurants, expensive bars, and for a lot of people they can't go in these places, and That's tough. They say where there's a lot of inequality, there's always crime. And that's due to the fact that men see the only answer to climb the ladder, often through violence. It's often why the gladiators were so successful back in the Roman times. To make it big, you sometimes put yourself forward as a gladiator. And this still goes on. To make it big in the world of the West, you have to put yourself forward as a professional sportsman, MMA fighter, footballer, you name it. I'll stop here because there's a car a little out the road and it's a little bit noisy. But the point is, it's not just in Sardinia where there's inequality, it's all around the world. I don't know what's going to change this, because what we currently have is not working. But I'm not agreeing with communism. Far from it. But something has to change. Free education for all, that would be the best route in my mind. This is known as the Necropoli di Cagliari, but also the Tuvixeddu necropolis. As I tend to butcher these names, I'm just going to call it the necropolis. Where we are right now is a hill just inside the city of Cagliari, between the centre and the airport to the west. Between the 6th and 3rd century BC, so that basically means between 2,300 and 2,600 years ago. The Carthaginians chose to use this hill to bury their dead. So once again, I am here, very few people. So there's two little old people over there, and there's a little old man over here. It's a very peaceful sight. You can see the massive docks over there. This side is the docks, and new builds over here. We're surrounded by all this new development, but despite that, the necropolis is in surprisingly good condition. It's a series of, well, hundreds if not thousands of tombs buried into the limestone. Well, let me go have a look. Let's have a look. These burials were reached through a well dug into limestone rock from 2 to 11 meters deep. Once again, it's incredibly beautiful around here. You've got the songs of wild birds, beautiful little flowers. Someone might be able to tell me what these are. Try and hide behind this tree. I won't get interrupted by the birds, but the law of sod is the wind always starts when I'm trying to speak. But we are surrounded by, there's the airplane flying into the airport that I'll be taking off from later. Just behind that little birdie. But it is rather beautiful. So what we see here is this has been quarried, and a lot of Cagliari, Sardinia, has been built through the limestone cliffs. Fortunately, not all of the graves have been disturbed because of this. So despite lots of quarrying, many of the graves were intact, and that's what I was able to see at the museum yesterday. It's quite remarkable. So some of these graves are thought to be between 1700 and 1800 years old, spanning up until about 1500, maybe 1400 years, the newest one. So basically a range between 200 AD and 600 AD is the rough timeline, but the general consensus is 300 to 600 AD. The graves mainly consist of, there's Roman graves, Carthaginians. What you can't experience with me is just the wonderful smells. This smells incredible. It all smells really good. Let's continue on our little journey. A little bit more background on the necropolis. Let's start with the graves. When each burial chamber was first made, the burial chamber was supposedly incredibly well decorated. In a way, like the burial chambers that you would see in Egypt 2,500 years ago. At this site, there's an array of very interesting Punic tombs. The Uraeus tomb and the Fighter tomb are of particular interest, and I'll highlight those later. This necropolis has been open since May 2014, and the archaeological area is huge. It consists of about 80 hectares, which is about 200 acres. Many of the impressive artifacts that were found at this necropolis can be seen at the Archaeological Museum that I visited earlier in the video. This place and the Archaeology Museum are a must visit if you're a fan of ancient history, the history of Sardinia, the history of the Carthaginians, the history of the Romans, or just a fan of slightly strange places, because how often do you see ancient burial sites made out of limestone? For me, it's quite a rarity. I found this place immensely fascinating. It was a little bit disappointing in the fact that all of the displays were in wood. Unless the wood was undercover, for example this wood, you couldn't actually read it due to the weathering of the wood. This basically shows the fighter's chamber. This is one of the more prestigious burial chambers that was found on the site, and it shows the size of the chamber, it shows how much space the laid down fighter had, and it also gives an example of some of the possessions that were found inside that chamber by the archaeologists. Little did he know he would later be dug up by very keen archaeologists, super keen to disrupt his life of peace. A little bit less windy here. I'm stood where the railway line transport limestone out of the quarry to effectively the city, maybe the port, or maybe anywhere around Sardinia, I don't know. Hence a lot of graves were destroyed in time, but it is amazing to think how many graves still exist and are still intact. The sad thing is that people are no longer in the graves, and I'm sure they didn't wish to be excavated when they thought, well, that's where I'm going to get buried. Maybe in time, that graveyard that I looked around yesterday with all the tombs will be excavated by people in 1500 years. Their bodies will be taken out. People will marvel at the marble tomb that have been left there. And there will be someone just like me talking about it and then wondering, how did all this come to get destroyed? But this is what time does. Archaeologists are still a little unclear on the exact number of graves at this site, well, tombs at this site, and to be honest, tourists are still very unclear because of all the eroded signs. However, I did still manage, despite the fact that I was literally the only person at the site, bar the old man at the beginning and the two old people who were leaving. I did manage to spend a good hour and a half here, and like I said right at the beginning of this scene, it is well worth a visit, and it honestly is truly fascinating. I found myself walking back through the Sunday market to the centre of the town. Fairly long walk, but a walk that is very manageable and very achievable by all. And because of what's going on with the market, I highly recommend it, because you'll see some fascinating architecture and certainly some fascinating characters along the way. It would be a shame to risk coming all the way to this Italian island of Sardinia while the coronavirus is rife and not try some amazing pasta. This one is apparently well talked about in TripAdvisor, so I'm going to give it a go.
Ricotta cheese, walnuts and gorgonzola.
Yeah.
Potato, fresh mint and pecorino cheese. This is typical Sardinian cuisine.
Okay.
Ricotta and saffron.
Yeah.
Ricotta and chard, spinach, similar spinach. You can mix the ravioli or pasta.
Fantastic. And this one? This one here?
This is traditional sweet, Sardinian sweet, seadas.
So for dessert maybe?
So
sweet, like dessert?
Sweet, we fry and with honey.
Oh wow, okay. Then I will start with a mix, the ravioli.
Okay. And sauce? Sauce Motarga is traditional fish eggs, traditional food.
Fish eggs?
Fish eggs, yeah.
Okay.
Mushrooms, mix of cheese, Athenian sage, Capitanese is tomato and fresh sausage.
Yeah.
Tomato spicy, tomato basil, tomato and tune.
What's this one? Sorry. Yeah.
Tum.
What?
No.
It looks good. Oh, it's lentil? I don't know. Yeah.
Legumi, ceci and mix of cereal and.
Wow.
Okay.
What's your favorite?
Capitanese is typical.
If it's typical, okay.
Yeah.
Let's go with that. Yeah. We'll go large. Yeah, large. Let's go crazy.
Mix of all?
Yes, please. Yeah. Right. It's all made here. The ravioli is all made. Yeah.
Yes.
So that took about 2 minutes to get the order, and so this is what a real Italian fast food is. My God, that's delicious. That's really delicious. I've got 2 types of cheeses on top, Parmesan and the Cagliari. I'm not saying that right, but phenomenally good. And obviously my favorite beer from Sardinia. It's so good. Okay, so what I have here is I demolished the first course, which was amazing, and now I've got the sweet course, which is also a ravioli, but the ravioli has honey on top of it and also sugar. I have to admit, I've had ravioli savory form pretty much most weeks of my entire life, and that was some of the best ravioli I've ever had. But I've never had sweet ravioli, so this is a first for me. So let's see if I can set this up. I'll try with the one with the honey first. It's been deep fried. It's really good. I was just seeing the that's the one with the sugar. Some sort of yellow. I don't know what's inside it, to be honest. I have no idea what's inside it. That one's got lemon inside it. It's good. It's really good. If I had to pick, I'd pick this one, the one with the honey. They're both really good. You might have guessed, top marks outside the Tom pasta place, where you can get probably the finest ravioli that I've certainly had in a very long time. Highly recommend it. Meal costs me €13.50. Good value. I recommend it if you're ever in Sardinia, possibly on your way to the Necropolis, or possibly on this street. My opinion, what I think about a lot of the buildings, it reminds me of Cuba in a way. Obviously the same sort of people that conquered Sardinia back in the day with the Spanish kings also went to Cuba and made their mark there. There's a lot of buildings, I'm not particularly these ones in particular, but some buildings you find in Havana look like this. But there's some really remarkable buildings that do look like they could have fallen out of Cuba. It feels more like that. It feels more of a Spanish city than it does an Italian city, and that's my impressions on it. Please correct me if you think completely the opposite, but that's just how the flavour this city gives me. Yes, good Italian food, but a very Spanish feel to it.
Urrando stacchi stretto sacco, schioppo in spalla, sciabla a fianco, collo dritto, muso franco, un gran casco, un gran turbante, molto onor, poco cantante, poco cantante, poco cantante. Ed invece del fandango una marcia per il fango, per montagne, per valloni, con le nevi e salioni, al concerto di tromboni, di bombarde e di cannoni, che le porre tutti i tuoni all'orecchio fan fischiare.
You do need legs in this city. There's a lot of walking. It reminds me of certain Swiss cities, like Lausanne. You have to walk up the hills and everything to sort of see the major sites. Similar to Lisbon.
Non vivrai quell'aria brillante, non vivrai farfalloni amoroso, notte e giorno di torno girato, delle belle tornando a riposo, Narcisetto ad un giro d'amor, delle belle tornando a riposo, Narcisetto ad un giro d'amor. Cherubino alla vittoria, alla gloria militar, cherubino alla vittoria, alla gloria militar, alla gloria militar, alla gloria militar.
I came here last night, obviously with the camera with no battery. I only got a dark clip of my phone, so I thought, let's come back. A talented individual goes up and down the steps. And that's why the Italians are so good at football. If you want to be World Cup champions, practice your kicky-uppies on all these steps. Amazing. And he's not even hustling. He's just doing it because he wants to. He's got no hat down saying, "Hey, give me money." He's doing it because he wants to.
So this is the bastion of Saint Remy. It was actually built at the end of the 19th century, and it's possibly one of Cagliari's most important fortifications. If you look around the base, some of the stones actually date back to the beginning of the 14th century. However, what you see here with the Arc de Triomphe rooftop, which you can walk under, and these modern staircases, was effectively built in the 19th century. However, the bastion of Saint Remy was badly damaged by American B-17s during the Second World War in 1943. However, it was faithfully rebuilt. What you see today was effectively what it looked like at the end of the 19th century. The covered walkway, which we just walked past, just at the bottom of the stairs, halfway up, on the day I was there, was hosting something to do with the European Union, so I stayed well back. However, I think it usually houses various artistic exhibitions and cultural spaces. And it has to be said, this does have one of the best views in the city by a long way. This is the Umberto Terrace. This used to be the bastion of Santa Caterina, which is where the old Dominican convent used to be before it was destroyed by a fire in 1800. I learned that it was said that a conspiracy was prepared in the austere quarters of the convent to kill the Viceroy Camarasa in 1668, and possibly the most sensational episode of blood in the history of the city during the Spanish government. As you walk around the Umberto Terrace along the old wall, you do get an amazing panorama of the whole city. Out in front of us, you see the ports. Pretty much most of the city you can see from this vantage point, including the east, the south, and the west. The north is slightly blocked because the buildings are blocking that view. And look, our Italian superstar is still at it. I have to admit, I do admire his tenacity. I mean, this guy is not a quitter. It'd be interesting to know if this guy's out there every day. He certainly seemed to be at home while kicking that ball up and down prolifically. Just enjoying the last bit of the view.
It's less windy now, but you can pretty much see that I've encompassed the entire city, because you can see the church just over here that I pretty much started at, and that's the hill over there. Gone all the way from that hill to begin with, it starts, taking in that mound over there, taking in the streets over here. The market would have been over that direction. The palace is just up here. It's been quite an experience. I've very much enjoyed this city. My advice, you can do it in a weekend. If you come to Sardinia for a week on holiday, make sure that you visit the city for a couple of days at least. Great city, and I'm still exploring more. I've got my bag on my back, so it's a little bit harder today, but you know what, the kind of mild weather today, it's about 7-8 degrees cooler today than it was yesterday, so this is much more comfortable. I've got my coat on, I've got my bag on. This is a great view. This really is a great view.
Well, not since I was in Parma in Mallorca, and you might remember my video from Parma. I visited their fantastic cathedral. Now, while the Cagliari Cathedral isn't as big as the Parma Cathedral, it has to be said, visiting this cathedral, I was left gawping. The internals of this cathedral are a sight to be seen, hence the reason I think it's appropriate to film and show you as much as possible. Especially where we will go in a moment, the lower levels of this cathedral. A little bit of background on this cathedral. It's a Roman Catholic cathedral. It's dedicated to the Virgin Mary and Saint Cecilia. It was built in the 13th century in a Pisan Romanesque style. It obtained cathedral status in 1258. In the 17th and 18th centuries, it was renovated along Baroque lines. And in the 1930s, it finally received its current facade. I'll splice a picture just here, just so you can see. In the neo-Romanesque style inspired by the cathedral in Pisa. There is something else in Pisa, not just a leaning tower. The current facade was actually demolished in the early 20th century and replaced by the neo-Romanesque one that you see today, sometime around the 1930s. There's an array of artwork in this cathedral, and I'm sure if you wanted more information on this cathedral, I advise having a look at Wikipedia. The cathedral has its own website, and it's highly worth a visit, especially if you can't get to Sardinia, because you might be on the other side of the planet. Hello to my US subscribers, by the way, those in Chicago, those all over the USA. The crypt is the sanctuary of the martyrs. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it's home to 179 niches. The sanctuary, as you can see, has 3 chapels, all with Baroque decorations. This is the chapel on the left side. Chapel number 2, right in the center. And this is chapel number 3. Honestly, the marble probably can't really be visualized with the camera that I'm using, but simply, wow. It's something else, I think. I mean, it is something else. Once again, I'm here on a Sunday, and pretty much the only person, at least in the crypt. There's a couple of people upstairs, but this is phenomenal. I'm taking my hat off out due to respect, but I'm just going to do a quick up and round, and then I'll turn the camera off, and then I'll sort of contemplate this place, because this is phenomenal. The lion that you see there is one of 4 marble lions.
Well, I'm glad I went back to the Santa Maria church because it was truly phenomenal. I'm also incredibly lucky that I got to go in there and other than the 2 gatekeepers who were looking after the church, no one else was there. Well, for most of the time anyway. A beautiful place. I mean, I've never seen marble work like it in any church in the world. I've been to a lot of churches. I'm no expert, but wow. Now I'm just trying to make my way down. I've taken a different route this time. So I take a different side street to where I am. I think I've got to take this lift. I've been pretty much walking everywhere up until now, so taking a lift is a little bit alien, especially if I get stuck. Oh no. Yeah, it looks like I can get out of here. Let's see. You see, it's like a ghost town. I know it's not really. People are just somewhere else. But I managed to get out through the car park back there. It was a little bit intimidating. Now I'm just heading down towards the coastline because that's going to be where I'm going to get the train or possibly the bus to the airport. Very simple procedure. I have a little bit of time, but this is the direction. And that's where I was just walking with that incredible view. And now I'm going to head this way, head to where that plane is landing. For 3 spritzers here. Get good value. They love a good spritzer here. But their beer is pretty good. I mean, I spent most of the night trying different beers. I got hungry after some very steep hills, so I'm retopping and dropping my phone. Apparently one of the best Indians in Sardinia, at least for the money I'm told, so let's give it a go. Well, that's nice and spicy, it's a good sauce, very good. So if you want to get the train to the centre of Cagliari from the airport, it will take you right here, which is effectively right at the bottom of where the marina is. And where the marina is that central street where a lot of the buildings look like you could be in Cuba. But obviously this was here first. It's a simple way to get to and from the airports. Alternatively, you get one of these buses over here. And that's going to get you to the, maybe not that particular bus, but check on Google Maps, tell you which bus to get. There's quite a few, and the bus will take not long, it'll take 15-20 minutes from this sort of location, as will the train. Obviously, Cagliari is a big place, reasonably big anyway, so if you've got lots of luggage and you're arriving late, you might want to do what I did when I first arrived, just get a taxi, because I had to get there before a certain time. But on the way back, debating should I get the train or the bus? I am pretty much the only person everywhere.
It was at this moment that he knew he fucked up.
It was at this moment I knew I fucked up. Excuse my French. I got off the bus where Google told me to get off to go to the airport. They let me off at a motorway. I had to jump over the motorway, which wasn't nice. And now I'm on this estate. I can't physically get to the airport without braving a motorway again. So I'm having to walk 35, 40 minutes around. I could have got the train. I could have got the train and I would have been at the airport in about 15 minutes. Oh no. Alright, so the rule is, if you're near the train station and you think the bus is a good idea, do not do it. I don't know how it messed up. This is not good. Where the light is, I think that's where the airport is. 2 cars have passed me. They didn't stop. It's not really the main route to the airport, is it? Christ. Thanks, Google. Really appreciate that. Google suppresses most of my videos, and now it's also sending me the wrong way to the airport. Unbelievable. It's like Google doesn't want me making these videos. Hello. I'm in a farm now. I feel like if I get past this safely, I'll be okay. Sure, he's a nice farmer. Yeah, scenic route. To say I'm tired is an understatement. I'm glad that I got here though. Let's see if I can just get past this last dangerous bit. Hey, so just sat down despite the long walk, and that was pretty epic. A journey that should have taken 15 minutes, I think, took me an hour and a half. Luckily, I haven't missed my flight. I've got time just to say this. I really did like Cagliari, the capital of Sardinia. In fact, I loved it, and I urge you, if you get a chance, come visit, because I get the impression it is underappreciated, because a lot of people generally fly into Sardinia, and this is where the wind ruins my words. Anyway, a lot of people fly into Sardinia and they go into the holiday resorts around the island. They check out the beautiful beaches. I mean, one of the most famous is the James Bond beach. I didn't get there. We're not in the summer yet. I will come back. The wind is ruining this take, hence all the cuts. It's a phenomenally beautiful city. It's got so much history. Some of the history I didn't even scratch the surface on. If you get a chance, just for a weekend break, or just add to your holiday in Sardinia, I highly recommend it. I would definitely come back here again. Food was phenomenal, wine was phenomenal, the people were really nice. And once again, I'm really annoyed I should capture some of those interactions on camera. I'm very, very bad at doing that. But if you like what you saw, give it a like, give it a share, I'll leave a comment below, even subscribe, that really helps me out. And I hopefully will see you in the next video. Honestly, it's been amazing. I'm looking forward to getting back home and publishing this video and then moving on to the next video. I'm enjoying doing that. Thanks for watching.